Okay, this is wrapping up the series on the Residential Building Inspector, B1 for the 2021 IRC. Today we're going to complete the IRC from chapters 26 to the conclusion. So maybe I didn't emphasize this enough in like parts 1 and on, but I've taken 18 of these exams and passed them successfully on my first try. I've been through this process, and in the comments that I've had on some of the videos I've done, they said they failed and they had to go back and, study more of the stuff I had and tab and highlight, and then they'd pass. So what I'm getting at, it's really important if you do want to pass this test, this is the best way to do it. The layout in this 6-part series is the best way that I know of. And I've tried lots of things. I'm registered in a couple engineering fields. I've taken lots of certification exams outside of the ICC tests as well. So I kind of have a feel on how to do this, and I find this the smartest way to do it. So you really need to go through all of these tests 4 times, to the point where when you read the question, you don't necessarily have to memorize the answer, I want to be clear, but when you read the question, you can realize in your mind, hey, if you're talking about notches on studs or electrical or energy efficiency, you know what chapter it is. You know the general section. Because when you're bogged down with a time limit and cranking out 80 questions in this narrow window of time, you have to know where things are. So just a little bit of advice before we get into this next section. Take the time to highlight. That's why I'm going through this. And when I look at the analytics in some of my videos, people will look at the intro but not realize the reason I'm going through this, taking the time to go through this with you, is so as you go through, it makes it a lot easier for you to take your 2021 IRC and highlight the applicable sections. It'll speed things up enormously for you. Takes me so long to go through and look up stuff, but if you see it, you can go right to the right paragraph and highlight it. So I just recommend taking advantage of this resource. It means the difference between pass and fail. And at $300 a pop for a test, it makes sense doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last test, test 5. This is part 6, but we're doing test 5 because I lumped one test into 2 parts. And wrap this series up. Good luck to you, and thanks for watching. Let's go ahead and roll over to the test. Okay, start off at catchsunlight.com, QFPE. And I did want to touch this one more time. Read the instructions. I have instructions in this series. So what this does, I'm reading through. If you look here, so these tests are set up strategically from the applicable building codes to match what you're going to see on the test, okay? But there's a process. This isn't just the quizzes. There's a process. The training process involves reviewing each of the tests in the respective sections below repeatedly, where each question is answered by opening the applicable codes and looking up the answer. And that's a key element here. Even if you know the answer on subsequent iterations, you have to look it up. It's important to look it up. And try not to look at the reference, but obviously it's there in the question. It's hard to ignore, but what I'm getting at is you need to be able to look it up. That process over time is going to speed up your ability in a test to be able to look up these questions. So look up the question every time. I recommend going through this 4 times. The applicable reference, you have to highlight it, annotate it, underline it, whatever. Even if you know the answer, you need to look it up every time. The quizzes need to be reviewed at least 4 times. Each of the certification section takes approximately 1 week to complete. Review 4 times. Now you could do this whole thing in a week. I mean, it's entirely feasible, all 5 of these tests, but it would take you probably 40, 50 hours of intense work. So you just got to plan on that. It's a good telework opportunity if you have remote work options with your employer, like your CO, your building department, code official says, hey, go off, get residential building inspector certified. There's lots of prep courses available, but this is free. And it's available, for homework, at work home. So kind of makes sense. In any event, that's that. I won't belabor this. Let's get into RBI, Residential Building Inspector, B1, Quiz 5. We're going to go through chapters 26 through 24. Just keep in mind, most of these questions are residential plans examiner, but I think it's important to have the balance. So this will prep you for both. I recommend taking both, but it will get you through residential building inspector. All right, so let's go ahead and start with part one. Before we do that, let's scroll down. I think there's 82 questions associated with this test. So let's start off. Where public sewer is not available, the sanitary drainage piping system shall be connected to what? Well, private sewage disposal system. It should be, it's kind of one of those common sense things. But let's look at 2602.1. 2602.1, where public sewer is not available, the sanitary drainage piping and systems shall be connected to a private sewage disposal system in compliance with state or local requirements. Okay, simple as that. A plumbing pipe going through a foundation wall shall be sleeved, where the sleeve shall be greater than the pipe size by what multiple? So every time you go through a foundation, you have to have things sleeved. Otherwise, you have potential movement. 2603.4, let's take a look at that. The sleeve shall be no more than 2 pipe sizes greater than the pipe passing through the wall. So the answer is 2 times right there. Let's look at 3. When trenching to install plumbing-related piping next to a foundation, the bearing plane must be avoided. The bearing plane is defined as a line that extends downward from the foundation footing at what angle? So I want to be clear, and obviously there's some soil factors at play here, but generally speaking, you want to maintain the 45-degree angle. And this has bit me on a couple situations when I've dealt with commercial properties, but what I'm getting at is if you have like a strip footer, a foundation, or whatever it happens to be, you need to maintain, it's a 45-degree angle. So what that means is when you're digging down next to that footer and going down below the footer, let's say, you have to offset laterally at least 45 degrees, if that makes sense. So I'll show you where that is. It's 2604.4. 2604.4 says, let's see, 2604.4, right there. The upper boundary of the bearing plane is a line that extends downward at an angle of 45 degrees from horizontal from the outside bottom edge or footing or wall. So 45 degrees. It looks like an error in my coding there. It should be 2 separate items, but it is 45 degrees. That's the answer. All right. When I say coding, I mean HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right, number 4, unless specific intermittent supports are installed, piping underground for plumbing uses shall be laid on what for its entire length. So let's look at 2605.1. 2605.1 requires piping in the ground should be laid on a firm bed for its entire length, except where support is otherwise provided. So it's on a firm bed is what that answer is. Right, number 5. A toilet shall not be set closer than how far from its center to any sidewall. Hey, and I want to point out something while we're here. Keep in mind, this isn't Chapter 11 of the IBC. Chapter 11 of the IBC goes into accessibility. This is not accessibility. The number would be 17 inches for ADA compliance. It's 15 inches for standard construction. So always remember 15 inches, but let's make sure you have it in the code. 2705.1. 2705. 2705.1.5. Water closets, lavatories, and bidets. A water closet, lavatory, and bidet shall not be set closer than 15 inches from its center to center on any side or partition wall. Okay? So it's 15 inches. While we're on this, let's keep on reading in this section 5. There shall be a clearance of not less than 21 inches in front of a water closet, lavatory, or bidet to any wall or fixture door. Okay, so let's read the next question because that answers that as well. What is the minimum clearance in front of a toilet to a wall? It's 21 inches. So keep that in mind. All right, let's look at number 7. What is the minimum shower compartment interior cross-sectional area and minimum dimension? 2708.1. 2708.1, right here, shower compartment shall have not less than 900 square inches of interior cross-sectional area. Shower compartment shall not be less than 30 inches. So right there, it's 900 square inches and 30 inches, and that's a minimum Let's go to 8. Fold down seats shall be permitted in the shower, provided that the required minimum area is maintained when the seat is what? Let's look at 2708.1, exception 1, right here. Fold down seats shall be permitted in the shower, provided the required 900 square inches dimension is maintained when the seat is in the folded up position. So just keep that in mind. Let's look at 9. Individual shower valves shall be what? 2708.4. Individual shower and tub shower combination valves shall be balanced pressure thermostatic or combination balanced pressure thermostatic valves that conform to the requirements of everything here. So let's see, be balanced pressure thermostatic would be the answer. Excuse me. 10. The minimum size of a maintenance access opening to whirlpool bathtub circulation pump shall be what? 2720.1. 2720. Jump over here to 2720.1. Where the manufacturer's instructions do not specify the location and minimum size of field fabricated access openings, an opening of not less than 12 by 12 shall be installed for access to the circulation pump. They could also ask you something else. I'm going to read this next sentence. Where pumps are located more than 2 feet from the access opening, an opening of not less than 18 by 18 shall be installed. So in this case, it's 12 by 12. The reason I wanted to read that second statement or sentence there was they would just as likely ask you, if it's 2 feet away, what size do you need? An 18 by 18. So just keep that in mind. All right, the minimum size of a drain for a macerating toilet system is what? 2723.2. Let's go to 2723.2. The size of the drain from the macerating inlet system, toilet system, shall be not less than 3/4 inch in diameter. So the answer is 3/4 inch. All right, 12. Non-potable water outlets, such as hose connections, shall be identified with what? 2901.2.1. Let's jump over to 29. Non-potable water outlets, such as hose connections, open-ended pipes, and faucets, shall be identified with signage that reads as follows. Non-potable water is utilized for application name. Caution, non-potable water do not drink. The words shall be legibly and indelibly printed on a tag or sign constructed of corrosion-resistant waterproof material, or shall be indelibly printed on the fixture. So basically, and then they go through the letter height. They could ask questions on that. But no, for non-potable water, this is where you're going to go look. So that's the answer there for number 12. Number 13, what is the minimum air gap for backflow protection were required? 2902.3.1. Let's look at 2902.3.1. Right there, air gaps. The required air gap shall be not less than twice the diameter of the effective opening of the outlet and not less than the values prescribed in table 2902.3.1. So if you come over here to table 2902.3.1, as an example, if you have 3/4 inch, it's 1.5, half inch is 1, 1 inch is 2 type thing. So the answer is 2 times. That's what you're looking for. All right, 14. What is the maximum water consumption flow rate for handheld shower spray head? Table 2903.2. Let's look at 2903.2. Okay, 2903.2 right down here. All right, so shower head, 2.5 GPM at 80 PSI. Okay, what is the maximum static water pressure in a plumbing system? 2903.3.2. The static water pressure shall be not greater than 80 PSI. So your maximum 80 PSI, so that answers question 15. But it also feeds back into the previous question, question 14. Well, why are they rating this at 80 PSI? It's because that's the maximum amount of water you can have, pressure-wise. You can't go above that. And there's also a minimum pressure. They might ask you about that. I don't think let's see, what did I do? Just bear with me. Anyway, I'm not going to take the time to look, but there's a minimum threshold of pressure required to be delivered. And they may ask you that too, but just realize, go to this section. If it's minimum or maximum, it's entirely possible it could ask you minimum. What is the minimum diameter of a water service line? So let's go to 2903.7. 2903.7. The size of the water service pipe shall not be less than 3/4 inch in diameter. So the answer is 3/4 inch. All right. What is the water supply fixture unit value for a kitchen sink? All right. Keep in mind, I want to show you something about these. It goes by an acronym within the code, WSFUs. And there's a correlation between WSFUs and DFUs, design fixture units. I really doubt they're going to get into much detail in terms of sizing. It's not complicated, but I'm not going to take the time to explain it. But just know these tables are here. So I don't think they're going to ask you necessarily a GPM for number of fixtures on the residential stuff. I don't think they do. But what they're going to ask you is to know how to use this table. So if you go to table P2903.6 right here, the question was a kitchen sink. So if you go down, kitchen sink right here, the WSFUs, it's 1.4. You just need to be able to look up from the table what the expected size is. And this is more of a residential building or plans examiner than building inspector, but just be aware, it's beneficial for you to know it's here. All right, residential sprinklers shall have a temperature rating range in degree Fahrenheit of what? 2904.2.1. 2904.2.1. Just bear with me for a second. 2904.2.1, except as provided for in section 2904.2.2, sprinklers shall have a temperature rating of not less than 135 degrees and not more than 225. Okay, intermediate temperature sprinklers shall have a rating of not less than what? 2904.2.2. Sprinklers shall have an intermediate temperature rating of not less than 175 and not more than 225 degrees Fahrenheit. Let me explain that a little bit, if you don't mind. So in this case, it's 175 for the intermediate temperature. Why do you have, if you look at NFP 13, you have all sorts of gradations of your sprinkler heads. The reason for that is you don't want to put like a 135 degree head, within a certain radius of your heat, heat supply, your forced heat air ducting output. So it's that kind of thing, and there's some prescriptive codes for that you can go through and gain. The ICC is not going to expect you as a residential building inspector to know the details. Just know where it is. All right. Intermediate temperature range sprinkler systems are required to be used if within what distance range from the front of a recessed fireplace? Okay, table 2904.2.2. Okay, fireplace, front of recessed fireplace, 36 to 60 inches. You need to use an intermediate temperature within 36 to 60. Okay. Outside of 60, you can go to a lower rating. Excuse me. All right, 21. To avoid horizontal separation requirements between sewer and potable water lines, the water service pipe is required to be how much higher above the sewer line? Looks like the 2906.4.1. 2906.4.1. Let's crank this over here. Separation of water service and building water sewer. Where the building sewer piping is not constructed of materials indicated in table 3002.1(2), the water sewer pipe and the building sewer shall be excuse me horizontally separated by not less than 5 feet of undisturbed or compacted soil. The required separation distance shall not apply when the bottom of the water service pipe that is located within 5 feet of the sewer is not less than 12 inches above the highest point of the top of the building sewer. So what that says is you actually have to, a lot of times, look, who wants to trench twice, right? But if you have a 12-inch separation, it's okay, especially when you're crossing lines. You can go closer than that if you sleeve it for a certain distance. They're going to ask you questions. I guarantee you'll get a question on that somewhere. Just know these highlights that I have here. All right, unless there are provisions to protect from freezing conditions, drainage, waste, and vent systems shall not be in what? P3001.2. Let's look at P3001.2. Let's see here. Crank this over a little bit. Okay, Portions of the above grade DWV system other than vent terminals shall not be located outside of buildings and attics or crawl space. I mean, the numbers is right there. Principle is, obviously you have vents in the attics, right? But they're protected from freezing because they're not going to accumulate water. You don't have like a trap or something in it. And that's the principle. Anywhere, they have to be protected from freezing conditions if they're anywhere where it's going to be below freezing. All right, 23. Galvanized steel piping used for waste drains shall not be used underground and shall be kept not less than how far above ground. P 3002.1, right here, piping within buildings. Except that galvanized wrought iron or galvanized steel piping shall not be used underground and shall be maintained not less than 6 inches above ground. 6 inches is the magic number. And they could actually ask anything in that question. They gave details like, they might say, well, what materials cannot use underground? And they'll give a list, and everything's okay except galvanized steel. It's kind of counterintuitive that you can't use galvanized steel underground. I don't understand the reason for it. It's like galvanized piping for natural gas. You can't do that. Why? Because of the sulfur content of the natural gas. It eats away the zinc or the galvanization material. I honestly don't know why they do it, but can't do it. All right, 24. How many drainage fixture units, DFUs, are in a 2-bath, multiple bath group? 3004.1. Let's go to 3004.1. Let's see here. 3004.1. All right, 3004.1. Okay, the load on a DWV system piping shall be computed in terms of drainage fixture units, DFUs, values in accordance with table P3004.1. And I have there's a table, I have it highlighted here. A multiple bath group, you can size your plumbing based upon 2 baths at 8 DFUs. So the number is 8 DFUs there. All right, sewers with drainage lines under 8 inches shall have cleanouts located at intervals of not more than how many feet? So under 8 inches, key term there. 3005.2.2. 3005.2.2. Building sewers smaller than 8 inches shall have cleanouts located at intervals of not more than 100 feet. So let's look at 100 feet. They might also ask if building sewers 8 inches and larger is 200 feet. Just keep that in mind. All right. A 4-inch horizontal drainage sewer pipe shall have a minimum slope of not less than how much vertical drop per foot of length? P3005.3. Okay. Horizontal drainage piping shall be installed in uniform alignment at uniform slopes not less than 1/4 unit vertical and 12 units horizontal for 2.5-inch diameter and less, and not less than 1/8 unit vertical and 12 units horizontal, diameters of 3 inches or more. When I did plumbing, you always used a 1/4 inch, but you can actually get away with an 1/8 inch with like 3 inch or greater. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't always have to be 1/4. An 1/8 is fine. 1/4 if it's 2.5 and less. All right, 27. How many DFUs on any horizontal fixture branch can be connected to a 3-inch pipe? Table 3005.4.1. Let's come down here to 3005.4.1. Maximum fixture units allowed to be connected with branches and stacks. So how many DFUs? So 3, any branch, the 3-inch pipe, and it's 20 DFUs right there. That's what it is. There's so many particular nuances. It's all operational definitions when you're dealing with plumbing. There's a lot of unique terms here. If you have any confusion, go back to the definitions and understand the definitions of the term that's italicized. Sometimes they forget to italicize it, but just be aware that you need the operational definitions to understand it. Otherwise, it gets very complicated because you're basically invoking your own mental definition for a term that's not correct. When you're dealing with plumbing, just be very careful in your definitions. Look at the definitions. A 3-inch building drain is a slope of 1/8 inch per foot. So building drain, here's an example. Building drain, that is a specific operational definition. So make sure you know what a building drain is. It's just not a general pipe. How many fixture units can be connected to it? table 3005.4.2. So down here, maximum number of fixture units allowed to be connected to the building drain branches, or the building sewer. You see these? Building drain branches, building sewer. Each one of those have a separate operational definitions. Same thing with branches and stacks. It's a separate operational definition. So understand what those are. In any event, if you look here at the table, it's 36 is your magic number. All right, let's look at 29. On-site non-potable reuse water used for subsurface gray water soil absorption systems shall be what? 3009.6. 3009.6. On-site non-potable reuse water used for subsurface gray water soil absorption systems shall not be required to be dyed. I don't know. I've never dealt with one. I don't know why you dye it, but whatever. All right, sewer vent terminals extending through the wall shall terminate not less than how far from a lot line? 3103.1.4. Let's see here. Let's jump over a little bit. 3103.1.4. Vent terminals extending through the wall shall terminate not less than 10 feet from a lot line, not less than 10 feet above the highest grade elevation within 10 feet in any direction horizontally of the vent. So 10, 10, 10 right there, 10 feet. All right, 31, a combination waste and vent system. Keep in mind, once again, operational definitions. It's right there. Combination waste and vent system. That's a specific operational definition. Can serve all of the following except what? 3111.1. 3111.1, let's crank this over. Combination waste and vent system. A combination waste and vent system shall only serve floor drains, sinks, lavatories, and drinking fountains. So it cannot serve toilets, is what that comes down to. All right, 32. A single trap serving fixture outlets not more than 30 inches apart can serve up to how many fixtures for kitchen sinks? 3201.6, exemption 2. All right, 3201.6. Exception 2. A single trap shall be permitted to serve 2 or 3 like fixtures limited to kitchen sinks and faucets. Common trap fixture outlets shall be not more than 30 inches. So sometimes you'll have like a 3-basin sink. And what this says is you can use the same fixture trap for each item. So use one trap out to your sewer line for 3 different sink basins, or 3 basins. All right, 33, the clear working area for energized panel boards. So think of a light panel. You have to design, width, depth, and height for being able to do service on it. It's NEC, OSHA, IFC, it's all the same. NEC goes into more details with greater voltage, but just keep that in mind. That's where this comes from. 3405.1. 3405.1. Jump over to 3405.1. And it gives you right here in this figure. You can go here, go to the code. It's in 3405.2, or you can go to 3405.1 figure, 3405.1. 36, 30, and 66. And keep in mind, 30 is the minimum. If you have a wider panel board, let's say you have a 42-inch panel board, your width needs to be 42 inches. So that's what it comes down to. So how high? It's 6'6", which is, 78 inches. Okay, overcurrent protection. 34. Overcurrent protection devices and panel boards shall not be placed in all of the following locations except E3405.5. Okay, location of working spaces and equipment. C, devices shall not be located in clothes closets, bathrooms, or over the steps of a stairway. So where you can put it is where? Bathrooms, clothes closets, steps of a stairway. Let's see, can't go there, over steps in it. Oh, okay, 34, I meant to say bedroom when I wrote this. I didn't catch this until now. So either B or D is bedroom. I don't remember which one's what. Clothes closets, bathroom. It's probably this one, in a bedroom. Should have been in a bedroom. Just keep that in mind. If people don't watch this video, they'll say, what the heck am I thinking? All right, let's go to which of the following individual conductor insulation type is acceptable. 3406.5, 3406.5. Individual conductor insulation. So you have different, if you look at the wire, it'll actually say it right on the side what it is. But in this case, RHH is clearly identified here in this section, 3406.5. So that's what you'd pick, 34 RHH. All circuit conductors between the service equipment and the final branch service overkit device is a what? 3501. Let's go to definitions. And let's see, feeder, all circuit conductors. So definitions, I mentioned this before, when they're asking for something, well, all circuit conductors between the service equipment and the final branch circuit overkit device is a what? That's your cue to go to the definition section. And it's a little bit challenging in the IRC because the definition sections are they're scattered throughout the book. It makes it very challenging. If you're in the IBC or NEC, it's one consistent location. So that does, you have to actually go to the electrical system. It could throw you a little bit on the test, but be aware, feeder would be a common question to ask. There's an expectation to know that. Okay, 37, the maximum number of disconnecting means for any service shall be grouped and not exceed how many? 3601.7. So let's go to 3601.7, maximum number of disconnects. Each service shall only have one disconnecting means, unless installed using some other sections. In all cases, the maximum number of disconnecting means for any service shall not exceed 6, and the multiple service disconnecting means shall be grouped. So the magic number is 6, but they have to be all right next to each other. 3601.7. Let's go to 38. All right, the minimum ampacity serving a one-family residence is, what's the minimum ampacity you can get away with a single-family residence? 3602.1. 3602.1. Ampacity, so it says it right there, 100 amps. That's what it is. And keep in mind, I mean, most people like 200 amps, but I want you to keep in mind something. You got to forecast what's going to happen in the future. I'm going on one of my diatribes, skip through this, but the reality is, with solar power and micro grids, your inverters with your battery systems, your typical maximum, home use residential inverter is 100 amps, unless you go to a three-phase system. So I think you might have some adjustments on this with new LED technology, a dependency on off-grid systems, minimizing power consumption. I could forecast you're going to see some changes. One of the homes I own, I have a 100 amp system on. My farm I have is a 50 amp all solar system. I like solar. I think it's where it's at, and it's so cheap. It's just incredible how cheap it is and how easy it is to install. Anyway, enough of my diatribe. Let's go on. 39, the minimum service load calculation is based on how many volt amps per square foot of floor area for lighting and general use receptacle outlets. Table E 3602.2. If you look here on the table, it's 3 volt amps per square foot of floor area for general lighting and general use receptacle outlets. So when you're sizing something and you need to check to make sure the rating's okay for what they're doing, like some monstrous house, 100 amps not going to work, So you may, in some weird cases, analyze a plan for correct sizing. I doubt you'll never, it'd be rare for you to have to do that, but homes, when they get that big, usually the municipality is going to require a PE stamp. All right, 40, with no correction factor required. What I mean is a PE electrical design. 40, with no correction factors required. A single-phase dwelling service rating for 100 amps requires what size of ungrounded copper conductor? So basically, ungrounded copper conductor. What does that mean? You're basically you're neutral, there's grounded conductors, ungrounded conductors. So anyway, let's just look and see what this says. 3603.1.1. 3603.1.1. Okay, so if you had 100 amps your service, keep in mind this is your service line. For instance, the service line is coming to your building, 100 amps. You have to have a 4 gauge copper. If you're copper, if it's aluminum, it's 2 gauge. Okay, so that gives you that. And I apologize if I'm huffing a little bit. I've been pretty sick the last few days, but I wanted to get this out. I wanted to wrap up this series. All right, 41, a 2 gauge copper service conductor requires a grounding electrode conductor of what minimum copper gauge? And this might throw you a little bit because your service conductor will be bigger than your grounding electrode conductor. So just don't get thrown by that. But if you look at it, E3603.4 right here, the grounding electrode conductor shall be sized based on the size of the service entrance conductor as required in table E3603.4, which is up here, down here, 3603.4. So size of largest ungrounded service entrance conductor. So we said we had a 2 gauge. So your size of your grounding copper is 8 gauge, right there. That's what it comes down to. All right, 42. An interior metal water pipe shall not be used as a conductor to interconnect grounding electrodes if it is located more than how far into the building from the point of entrance. So let's look at E3608.1.1.1. 3608.1.1.1. Yeah, and make sure you look at my highlights too as I go through this. 3608.1.1.1. Okay, so the number there is a metal ungrounded water pipe that is in direct contact with the earth for 10 feet or more, including any well casing effectively. And the bonding conductor shall be considered as a blah, blah, blah. Interior metal piping, interior metal water piping located more than 5 feet. So the answer to this is 5 feet, but keep in mind the answer to you have to be in contact with 10 feet to call it a conductor or a grounding electrode. So just keep that in mind. So I just answered 42 and 43. You can't be more than 5 feet in the building, and it has to be in contact with the ground at least 10 feet. What is the minimum diameter of a stainless steel rod type grounding electrode that is 8 feet long? 3608.1.4. 3608.1.4 right here. Rod and pipe electrodes not less than 8 feet in length and consisting of the following materials shall be considered as a grounding electrode. So you go down here, rod type grounding electrodes of stainless steel, 5/8 inch thick or diameter. So the answer is 5/8. 45. Rod and pipe electrodes shall be at least 8 feet in soil. If they can't be driven in directly or at an oblique angle not to exceed 45 degrees from vertical, they can be buried in a trench that is at least how deep? Let's look at 3608.1.4.1. And read this section. 30 inches is the answer, but what if you're in a soil with some bedrock? You can't get it 8 feet deep. You can't do it, and you're allowed to go to 45 degrees if you can't go straight down. If you can't do that, you have to have at least 30 inches. And 30 inches is, the reason they do 30 inches is if you're putting in a septic system, well, you have to have at least 30 inches anyway. Now that's not always the case because you'd be on public sewer, but generally speaking, you have to have at least 30 inches or figure a way to do it. Okay, if you can't, a plate grounding electrode is required to expose a minimum square feet of what to exterior soil. So if you're using a plate grounding electrode, you have to have a plate of how many square feet? E3608.1.5. So plate electrodes, and it's 2 square feet right there. So right there. All right, 47. Which of the following materials are prohibited from being a grounding electrode? So look at 3608.5 and E3608.1.4. So 3608.5. So aluminum electrodes shall not be permitted. And 3608.1.4. 3608.1.4. Yeah, so you go through this list as well. It doesn't give you aluminum as an option. So just remember, aluminum does not hold up at all. If you use a lightning protection, grounding electrode, things like that, you cannot use aluminum. It doesn't work. Bar aluminum grounding electrode conductors external to buildings shall not be terminated within how far from the earth? 3610.2, parenthesis 3. 3610.2, parenthesis 3. Aluminum, copper-clad, aluminum conductors, blah, blah, or equipment enclosures shall not be terminated within 18 inches of the earth. So they have to be at least 18 inches above the earth. And why is that? I can't remember the physics off the top of my head, but you'll see an anode, cathodic relationship there where it'll eat away the aluminum pretty quick. All right, let's go to 49. Branch circuit conductors. Branch circuit conductors, operational definition, very clear. So look in the definitions for that. For typical water heaters and electrical space heating equipment shall be sized not less than 1% of the equipment load. Some things you underrate, some things you overrate. If you're overrating motors, for instance, that are continuously running, always 125%. I mean, you're always going to see 125% as a number. So something, just keep in mind, if you have multiple ovens, things like that, which we'll get to, you derate it. So just keep that in mind. So go to 3702.10. This 125% is a good spot to guess when you don't have other options. So right here, branch circuits supplying space heating and water heating equipment shall be sized in accordance with the following. 125% right there. So 125%. So if you have to guess on any like resistance load, single standing resistant load, or an induction type, motor, size it for 125%. When you're looking at how something was sized. This isn't so much residential building inspector as it is plans examiner. Just keep that in mind. Everything I have highlighted in blue is more of the residential plans examiner. But once again, some of these things are open items for residential building inspector. I just recommend knowing it. Or at least going through it and highlighting it, not killing yourself studying it, but just know it, all right? Or know how to look it up. A minimum of how many 20 amp branch circuits shall be provided to all receptacle outlets in a kitchen? So 50 gives you E3703.2. 3703.2, kitchen. A minimum of 220 amp related branch circuits shall be provided for all receptacle outlets specified in section blah, blah, blah. So the answer is 2. And there's also other specifics. Read some of the stuff. Like your microwave, you have a micro vent type thing, you need a dedicated branch line for that kind of thing. All right, the demand factor shall be 100% for the first 3,000 volt amps. Keep in mind volt amp is a watt, except impedance, there's some impedance factors that are ignored. So they call them volt amps in the code. But the demand factor shall be 100% for the first 3,000 volt amps of calculated feeder load, and what percent in excess of 3,000 volt amps. So let's look at table E3704.2, parenthesis 1. E3704.2, parenthesis 1. Okay, so 100% of first 3,000 volt amps or less, 35% of that in excess of 3,000. So 35% is the magic number. That's your lighting and receptacles. What I mean by that is if you have, like, let's say you have resistance heating, you have the specific high load appliances, read some definitions here, but there's some things that you want to have specific load calculations directly for, and they're going to give you parameters in the code for that. But for general stuff, it's 35% derating above 3,000 volt amps. All right, the maximum overall demand for two typical electric ranges in a residence is what? Table E3704.2, parenthesis 2. So if you look here, number of appliances, these are demand loads for electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and other cooking appliances over 1.25 kVA ratings. So in this case, if you have two appliances, they have to be rated. You have to have a service load that can supply 11 kVA for those. Quite a bit of kilowatts there. So 11 kilowatts is what that is. 11 kVA. All right, 53. 75 degrees Celsius rated, type THHW. 1 gauge copper is rated for how many amps? Table E3705.1. 3705.1, allowable ampacities. So let's go to, we have 1 gauge right there, 75 degree right here. You have the type THHW right there, gives you 100 amps. That's how you can look that up, right there. Okay, 54. The underground service cable allowable wiring method has a designated abbreviation of table E3801.2. 3801.2. Let's jump over here to 3801. It comes down here. It's USE, underground service cable. So if you see that on a plan, you just have to know it's used. Once again, more of a plans examiner than a building inspector, but maybe some benefit knowing this. All right, 55. What is the maximum depth of cover for non-metallic raceways directly buried without concrete encasement under a driveway that is used to serve a one-family dwelling? And keep in mind, there's basically how deep do you have to have your electric service lines buried, or what is this? Anyway, your raceway for a service line buried. So let's just take a look at E3803.1. That is table, no, excuse me. Yep, table. Oh, it's 3802. Where's 3801? Next page. Just bear with me, folks. I'm stumbling over my words. There it is. Okay, so I think this is 3801.4. 3801, oh, I'm looking for 3803.1. 38, know this stuff too. I'm looking for 3803. 3803.1. There you are. Okay, so all locations specified below. So minimum cover requirements for burial in inches. So it has different parameters depending on where you're at. Let's see. We are a non-metallic raceway, directly buried without concrete encasement or other approved raceways. And it's under a driveway. 1 and 2 family dwelling driveways and outdoor parking areas. It gives you 18 inches. So the magic number there is 18 inches. Underground service conductors that are not encased in concrete and are buried into 18 inches or more below grade shall have their location identified by a warning ribbon that is placed in the trench not less than how far above the underground installation. You know, I run into this, I've seen this all the time, where people are digging and pound into power lines because they're not ribboned. But the answer is 12. Let's look at 3803.2. 3803.2. So underground service conductors that are not encased in concrete and they're buried 18 inches or more below grade shall have their location identified by a warning ribbon that is placed in the trench not less than 12 inches above the underground installation. So if you're going below 18 inches, you have to have a warning ribbon, is what that says. All right, receptacle is placed in a family room, should be installed so that no point measured horizontally along the floor line of any wall space is more than how far from a receptacle outlet. Let's look at 3901.2.1. 3901.2.1, spacing. General purpose receptacle distribution. Receptacles shall be installed so that no point measured horizontally along the floor line of any wall space is more than 6 feet from a receptacle. So what that means is you got to have them, you can't be spacing them no more than 12 feet. Because if you're in the middle, you have to reach one within 6 feet. So 6 feet's the number. But just keep in mind that gives you a 12 feet separation maximum. You can want to be closer than that, but you can get away with 12 feet. Receptacles placed on kitchen walls should be placed at no point along the wall shall be more than how far from a receptacle. Let's look at 3901.4.1. 3901.4.1. Kitchen, pantries, etc. Receptacle outlets for countertop and work surfaces that are 12 inches or wider. So they could ask you this. That's countertop, 12 inches. Okay, so, but normally they're wider. Shall be installed in accordance with the section blah, 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 blah. So let's go 3904.1 down here. A receptacle outlet shall be installed at each wall countertop and work surface that is 12 inches or wider. Receptacle outlets shall be installed at no point along the wall is more than 24 inches. Now this is going to be both a building inspector and plans examiner right there. So just keep that in mind. 24 inches is magic number. And what that means, what does that mean? Well, within a kitchen, if you're anywhere you have a countertop that is 12 inches or more, you have to be able to access a outlet within 24 inches. Now, I do want to point out something. Just read through that, but keep in mind where the sink's located, your water source, obviously exempt. You're not going to have that there. So just keep in mind, if they ask you anything width of the counter, it might be width of the counter. No, it's 12 inches. Just realize this in this section. They might ask you the distance between outlets. That's 4 feet, or the minimum distance in any direction to an outlet. It's 2 feet along the wall. They could ask you either of those questions. All right, 59. At least one receptacle outlet shall be installed in the bathroom, such as is located within how far from the outside edge of each lavatory basin. So 3901.6. Okay, bathroom. At least one receptacle outlet shall be installed in the bathroom such that it shall be located within 36 inches of the outside edge of the lavatory. 36 inches right there. An outdoor outlet shall be installed at the 3901.7, 3901.7. So you have to have not less than one receptacle outlet that is readily accessible from grade level and located not more than 6 feet 6 inches above grade, shall be installed outdoors at the front and back of each dwelling. So front and back's the answer on this. 61. A 125 volt receptacle outlet shall be installed for the servicing of equipment within how far from the HVAC system to be serviced. So if you have any outdoor appliance or any appliance, fixed appliance, you have to have power at the appliance for servicing. Obviously, the appliance has its own independent power. But just keep in mind, you have to have an available power source within a certain distance. Well, what is that distance? Let's read 3901.12. So the number is 25. It says it right here. So go ahead and read through that. 25 feet. So pick 25 feet. 62. Which the following are not required to be GFCI receptacles. 3902.1 and .2. 3902.1 and .2. So, bathroom receptacles have to be GFCI right there. So it's not bathroom. And garage receptacles shall have ground fault circuit interrupter. So they have to be protected. And outdoor receptacles, they have to be ground fault protected. Well, what here is not a part of that? Crawl space. So that's your only option, crawl space. All right, 63. Mudroom receptacles located within how many feet of the top inside edge of a cleaning sink bowl shall have GFCI protection? So mudrooms, typically you don't have to have mudrooms GFCI protected for the receptacle outlets. But if you have a sink, you do have to have GFCI protection. And a mudroom, I arbitrarily chose a mudroom. You could call it whatever you will, entry room, whatever, cleaning room. Let's look at 3902.7. 120 volts are receptacles that are located within 6 feet of the top inside edge of the bowl of the sink supplied by single phase branch, blah, 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 shall have ground fault circuit interrupter protection. And keep in mind the yellow here, that is, residential building inspector. So this is something a lot of this electrical stuff is plans examiner, but a lot also is something you're expected to know when you're inspecting a facility, a house. You need to know that. Which of the following receptacle outlet locations are not required to be arc fault circuit interrupter protected? E3902.20. 3902.20. Let's see here. Arc fault circuit interrupter protected. Branch circuits that supply, kitchens, family rooms, dining rooms, living rooms, parlors, libraries, dens, bedrooms, sunrooms, recreation rooms, closets, hallways, laundry areas. Similar rooms or areas shall be protected by any of the following. Listed combination type arc fault circuit interrupter. It's not garages, so you don't need an arc fault on a garage. Receptacles controlled by a listed wall-mounted control device shall be considered equivalent to the required lighting outlet in all habitable rooms except a what? So what I'm getting there is you can have, you have to have a light switch on all habitable rooms, okay? But some of those rooms can use like a standard receptacle outlet that you plug a lamp into. Well, what kind of a room is that allowed in? So look at 3903.2, exception 1. Habitable rooms, at least one lighting outlet controlled by a listed wall-mounted control device shall be installed in every habitable room, blah, blah, blah. In other than kitchens and bathrooms, one or more receptacle controlled by a listed wall-mounted control device shall be considered equivalent. So the answer is a kitchen. Shall be considered equivalent. Let's see, receptacle controlled shall be considered equivalent to required lighting in all habitable rooms except a. So you could do that. You know, you had the receptacle. You go into a hotel, for instance, like a Marriott or whatever. They're going to have a lamp hooked up to light outlet that's operated by a light switch. That's permissible, but you cannot do that in the kitchen for whatever reason. I don't know why. All right, 66. A wall-mounted control switch at each floor level is required in stairways with more than how many risers? So if you have a stairway going from main floor to like a basement, for instance, you do have to have a light at each landing that has, so you have to be able to turn on the light from up the main floor as well as the basement. Or, maybe it's a split level, whatever it is, so you can see where you're going. But the question is, there's a caveat with that requirement. And it says if you're not above so many risers, you don't have to worry about it. There's enough, communicating light. You don't have to mess with it. Well, how many risers is that? Let's look at 3903.3. 3903.3, stairway lighting outlet control, floor levels has 6 or more risers. So it's 6 or more risers. Stairwells with more than, 7. So it's 6 or more is what the code says, so it's more than, with how many risers? With more than how many risers? 6 or more. Oh, 5. Okay, look carefully at the way I worded this, because that'll catch you. The code says 6 or more, right? Well, that's more than 6. More than 5, excuse me. More than 5 is 6 or more. So the right answer here is 5. I've lost points. I've never failed a test, but I've lost points because of this issue that I realized after the fact. Oh, crud. I should have done that. So it's just something you got to, key into and realize. Look at the wording. It's subtle sometimes. How many 12-gauge THHN connectors are allowed within half-inch rigid PVC Schedule 40 conduit? Table AE 3904.6 parenthesis 10. Jump over here, 3904.6 parenthesis 10. So all these tables are different types of conduit. If you come over here, half-inch THHN, 12 gauge, and the number's 8. So it's 8 right there. That's how you find that. Outlet boxes supporting Sealy fans marked by the manufacturer as suitable for this purpose shall not support a fan weighing more than what? So keep in mind the standard little blue boxes or whatever you happen to buy at Home Depot. You're mounting that in as a receptacle in your ceiling. You end up putting a fan in, or somebody's doing a remodel job and decides they want a fan. You can't do that. It's not allowed. You have to have something specifically listed to hold the fan. So look at E3905.8, and I'm talking the boxes, basically the little junction boxes. 3905.8. So it's something that's frequently missed. You just got to be aware of it. Outlet boxes and outlet box systems used as the sole support of a ceiling suspended fan shall be marked by their manufacturers suitable for the purpose and shall not support ceiling suspended fans that weigh more than 70 pounds. So it's 70 pounds is the magic number. 69, electric panel boards in wet locations shall be mounted to provide an airspace of not less than what distance between the enclosure and the wall. 3907.2, 3907.2. So you see right here, it's a 1/4 inch is what they give you. And just to describe a scenario for that, I don't know. I know somebody that installed a meat packing facility as a residential accessory structure Well, what do you do on that when he has to, wash down everything? You have to provide that 1/4 inch gap so you don't have stuff. It can dry out. I really don't know what motivated for the 1/4 inch gap. I just know it's there. You have to have it. 70. A flexible metal conduit used as an equipment grounding conductor is permitted to be no longer than what? 3908.9.1. 3908.9.1. So is that right? 3908.9. 3908.9.1. A copper, aluminum conductor, solid stranded covered bare, tight, flexible, 6 feet right there. So it's 6 feet. Oh yeah, I was in the wrong section. So it's 6 feet here. Just read through that. You're allowed to have 6 feet. More than that, you have to have a separate grounding conductor. All right, 71. What is the minimum size of an aluminum grounding conductor for an overcurrent device ahead of equipment rated at 200 amps? Table E, 3908.13. All right, 200 amps. Minimum size, 4 gauge right there is what you have. So that's what you need for your aluminum grounding conductor. Okay, what is the minimum amperage rating for receptacle outlets? So your plugins, can you go to a 12 amp? No. 10 amp? No. So in this case, is there an 18 amp breaker? I don't think so. It's, 14 gauge is the minimum you're going to be able to use, but let's look at 4002.1. Jump over here, 4002.1. It's 15 amps right there is what it says. 15 amps is the minimum. All right, 73. Cord-connected luminars are prohibited within 3 feet horizontally and how far vertically from the top of a bathtub rim. If you have a hanging light above a bathtub, you have to be at least 8 feet above, the light has to be at least 8 feet above that bathtub. Just generally speaking, that's going to be an important thing for it to identify in any inspection. Let's look at 4003.11. 4003.11. So just read this. Shall not have any parts located within a zone measured 3 feet horizontally and 8 feet vertically from the top of the bathtub rim or shower. So remember the 3-8 rule, 3 feet, 8 feet. Important to know that. Okay, 74. A recessed luminar that is not identified for contact with insulation shall have all recessed parts spaced at least how far from combustible material. Let's look at 4004.8. 4004.8. A recessed luminar that is not identified for contact with insulation shall have all recessed parts spaced at least 1/2 inch from combustible material. Right there. And 75, thermal insulation shall not be installed above a recessed luminar or within how far of the recessed luminar's enclosure unless the luminar is identified for contact with insulation. Let's go down here, E4004.19. Thermal insulation shall not be installed above a recessed luminar or within 3 inches of the recessed luminar enclosure. And keep in mind, it's very common to have recessed lights, lamps nowadays. Just validate that it's acceptable. I think all of them, if you go to Home Depot, they all are now. I have run into one inspection I did. The luminars, they were older and they were wrapped with insulation. It was clearly a violation. But it's not something a lot of people know. If you're inspecting a building from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, has this box recessed in the wall, insulation over it, it's not going to be obvious. And chances are, especially with the cellulose blown in, probably not code compliant. But here's the kicker. With modern LED technology, is it a big deal anymore? Probably not. But I would make somebody aware of it. Just let them know it's an issue. Right, 76. If GFCI protection required for snow melting outdoor equipment receptacle outlets? Let's look at 4101.7. Outdoor receptacles are not readily accessible and are supplied from a dedicated branch circuit for electrical snow melting or de-icing equipment shall be permitted to be installed without ground fault circuit interrupter protection. And keep in mind, this is a definition. Readily accessible. Ready access, readily accessible. That means you got to use like a ladder to get to it, okay? So what kind of configuration are we talking about? A lot of times what you'll see are receptacle outlets installed on the eaves or the soffits. So you can plug in snow removal systems. Those don't have to be GFCI protection. It's kind of like your dishwasher. It doesn't have to be GFCI protected. You know, same principle, because you can't access it, that kind of thing. So never is the answer there. Oh, excuse me, only if... Is GFCI protection required for snow melting outdoor equipment receptacle outlets? Only if readily accessible. All right. A permanently installed swimming pool is defined as being deeper than how deep? Let's look at 4201. 4201. Just bear with me for a sec. Okay, it's defined as 42 inches deep. So keep that in mind. You have to have a permit if you're more than 42 inches in deep. It'd be kind of lame for you to enforce it, but if they had like a 5 foot deep pool, technically, you know, you do have to have an inspection and all that goes into it and all the other code requirements. But 42 inches is the magic number. All right, let's look at 78. We're almost done, guys. All 15 amp receptacle outlets shall be Class A GFCI protected. Then how far from the inside walls of the pool? Let's look at 4203.1.4. 4203.1.4. Oops. Let's see, 42. So right now we're looking at 4203.1.4 here. GFCI protection, all 15 and 20 amp single phase receptacles located within 20 feet of the inside wall of the pool and outdoor spas and hot tubs shall be protected by a Class A ground fault circuit interrupter. Class A, so the number is 20 feet there. All right, 79, and now indoor 15 amp receptacle outlet is required to be GFCI protected if it is within how far from a hot tub? Now keep in mind, this is indoor. Last question would have been, you know, an outdoor. Well, could be, I guess, an indoor, but this specific one is indoor. There may be differences. So let's look at E4203.1.6. What I'm getting at is make sure to look at all the words very carefully. Sometimes there's differences between indoor and outdoor. Receptacles rated or less located within 10 feet inside wall of a spa or hot tub installed indoors shall be protected. So the answer there is 10 feet. So whereas last time it was 20 feet for pool, it's 10 feet away for an indoor hot tub. All right, 80. 3 more questions, guys. Metallic components of pools, such as underwater lighting shells, circulating motor pumps, metal liners, handrails, etc., shall be bonded together using copper wires, not less than what size? So let's look at E4204.2. E4204.2. It's 8 gauge. It says it right here, but I'll read this. The parts of pool spas and hot tubs shall be bonded together using insulated, covered, or bare solid copper conductors not smaller than 8 gauge, and using rigid metal conduit of brass or blah, 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 blah. Okay, so just keep in mind it's 8 gauge right there. 81. A pool without bonded parts in direct contact with the pool water shall have a bonded conducted surface that is a minimum of what area exposed to the water pool. So if you didn't have like a rail going in to a stairway or something like that in your pool, you got to put a plate in, you know, so you can bond it. So 4204.3, let's read 4204.3. Jump over here. 4204, and keep in mind, look at all the stuff I highlighted here. It might be worth just recognizing that. Okay, 4204.3, it's 9 square inches is the magic number. That's the size of the plate you need exposing pool water within a pool to make sure it's adequately grounded or bonded. All right, a power supply to a self-contained hot tub shall be at least what? Okay, 4208.1. 4208.1. Last question. Hallelujah. Okay, the outlet that supplies a self-contained spa or hot tub or a packaged spa or hot tub equipment assembly or field assembled spa or hot tub shall be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter. There you go. Be GFCI protected. All right, how'd we do? What did we miss? 81. Let me cruise up here. So, I don't think we missed anything, but it just shows you my coding's not 401, 40. Oops, I missed it. Yeah, there it is. Oh, it's not required to be dyed. So I picked the wrong one there. So hit that again, 42. There you go. All right, folks. Hey, we did it. Completed the series for Residential Plans Examiner, but more specifically, Residential Building Inspector, the B1 test, 2021 version. Honestly, if you're taking 2024, I wouldn't worry about it. I think it's going to be the same. It's a lot more challenging to highlight the 2024 code books. They went through and changed the formatting a little bit, so between 2021 and 2024. If you can get away with it, take advantage of the 2021 now. I don't know what to say. Thanks for the journey. It's been fun. I hope you get something out of this. I think the next one I'll do probably will be the B2 Commercial Building Inspector for the 2024 IBC. Anyway, keep looking at this channel if you're going to go for the B1, B2, B3. See if I can help you through that. Hey, you have a good one.